It's China's world, we're just paying for it. On the sidelines of Chairman Xi's Genocide Olympics, he and Argentine President Alberto Fernandez made a deal that will bring Argentina into China's gazillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative and includes, apparently, Xi's support for the Argentine position on the Falklands, or Las Islas Malvinas, as Chairman Xi will now be calling them, or the Maldives, as Barack Obama called them. Close enough for Washington work. Liz Truss has tweeted her displeasure at the chairman, reminding him that the Falklands are, quote, part of the British family. And the British family is as dysfunctional as any other family, so whether Britannia's daughters get treated any better than all those girls in the grooming gang towns remains to be seen. Like Solomon Islanders and Sri Lankans and Ugandans and Antiguans and many other parts of the British family, Falklanders might soon be finding themselves fostered out to the Chicom family. Here now is global forecaster David Murrin, who's actually been ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff on China. David, let me ask you with the most basic question. Has China already won?
It's very, very close. It's a big question and it's a big wake-up call. Define winning, and winning represents hegemonic power as far as the Chinese are concerned. I would argue that they seek to go further than that. And essentially, they are diametrically opposed to the values of democracy. So you can rest assured when they reach that hegemonic spot, democracy is deeply endangered and it's not something that can coexist alongside it. What's really scary is that they've been operating a plan since 1996 in the Third Taiwan Straits to undermine our society and institutions at every level, and at the same time seduce us to invest in their manufacturing base, which is exactly what we did under the carrot and pretext that they would become like us. And having done that, they've turned that manufacturing base back against us in an arms race that at the moment we are losing at a breakneck speed towards the peak of a commodity cycle in 2025, which is reminiscent of 1914.
Yeah, it's really the reverse of the old Soviet line that the capitalists will sell us the rope with which we hang them. Now the Chinese are basically selling us the rope with which we hang ourselves. There aren't really any comparisons for this in global history, where America outsources its entire manufacturing, including computer chips and all the up-to-the-minute stuff, and seems to think that that's going to work out for them.
Well, what's intriguing about it is the whole liberal dynamic of they would like to be like us. Of course, capitalism begats democracy. And of course, the dream that if we gave them WTO status, they would, of course, become like us is the seduction that took place. They knowingly did that with every intention of seducing us, but never delivering. So it was our greed and liberal aspirations in that respect, rather than hard understanding that we're dealing with the most sophisticated Machiavellian society in history. Even compared to Britain, I'd say we're pretty Machiavellian by European standards. They're a different degree higher. So they've concocted a plan for 20 years to undermine us, and we put our own neck in the rope, as you say, through our own greed and blindness. They've compromised our senior politicians in a way that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting here looking for leadership, and our leaders like Biden and Boris, for example, and their families are thoroughly compromised.
Yes, that's very interesting. I mean, one accepts with Hong Kong, say, that they're basically rubbing Boris Johnson's nose in it. There's not a lot he can do about them trashing the one country, two systems thing. But this thing, you've spent a lot of time in the Pacific, and you know as well as anyone how in the islands that Britain decolonized in the 70s and 80s, Australia looks at them with great concern because they've almost all been hollowed out by China, and yet we don't even talk about it.
What's fascinating for Europeans and Westerners, we sort of think as the Pacific as somewhere so far away it won't affect us. But the truth is, it's just exactly the same as it was in the First World War, Second World War. The same conflict and the dynamics of the conflict of island hopping and controls and spheres of influence is being replayed. And if I was in Australia, I'd be terrified of the encroachment in a Guadalcanal type methodology towards the Australian homelands, which they've been acting out. And everywhere, whether it's Barbados, you talked earlier about the loss of British membership. I was over there recently talking to people in Barbados saying, were you aware of what's just happened to your country? You've been seduced by the Chinese. And they answered, we didn't know. And only a few of our politicians really led the charge. It's happening everywhere before our eyes.
Yeah.
It's a form of colonialization, and following from that colonialization is the use of military bases to create a string of pearls, which creates control mechanisms and constricts our control of the oceans, which is essentially our freedom.
Which they've got right across the Indian subcontinent now. They basically got all Britain's Indian Empire ports, and they've made them state-of-the-art ports. And in Barbados, as you just mentioned, Sir Gary Sobers, the great cricketer, is among many fully convinced that in a country where there has never been more than 24% support for a republic, it was basically China pushed the political class into ditching the monarchy. I mean, where is the, when you look at Latin America in particular, because the Americans are supposed to have something called the Monroe Doctrine, in which they tell the world to butt out of Latin America because it's their backyard and none of the other great powers should interfere. Well, the Chinese are interfering now and the Americans are doing nothing about it. Why is that?
It's symptomatic of a hegemon in deep decay. Deep decay. It's unable to project and maintain its spheres of influence. And Ukraine is an example. It's a terrible example because Ukraine isn't in the West sphere of influence. We're a step too far and our head is stuck out too far. But all over the world, you're seeing this encroachment, and the acceleration came about with the rout from Afghanistan. That was a signal for hegemonic challenge on an epic scale. But the thing that really we should be most concerned about is the Belt and Road Initiative and the island mechanism of port acquisitions. Means nothing without a navy to operate from it. And China has the biggest shipbuilding capability in the world right now. So its naval arms race, which it's undergoing, is akin to the run-up to 1914. And the US Navy, through aerial denial weapons, has lost control of the regions around Taiwan. It can't counter these saturation missile attacks. And deep down, she understands that with that card up his sleeve, he can keep pushing America, and until America deploys new defensive weapons, it's really on the back foot, more than the press even realizes over Taiwan and the region's stability as far as American influence is concerned.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. They've already got, I think, the largest surface fleet. They're building 8 new carriers, and they've got a 99-year lease on that port in Sri Lanka. It's not looking good for a flailing America and its Western allies. Thank you very much, David. We will be talking more about this because it is the subject. It's China's world. It's China's